Good afternoon. Thank you for signing up for our CvilleBioHub webinar today. The NIH is open for business, strategic pathways for startups beyond SBIRs. We've got a couple of great presenters for you today, Michael Salgaller from the National Institute of Health and Joseph Conrad from the National Cancer Institute, and they're going to walk through their presentation. If you want to leave questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, which you can click to leave a question. We're going to hold questions till the end of the presentation, but we're expecting the presentation to be about 40 minutes with the remainder left over for the Q&A. If you don't see the Q&A box, there might be a little box that says more, and you can click that and you might see the Q&A box in that drop down. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. We have a PDF version of the slides, which you may have received already, but we'll make sure everyone gets that after the presentation. We are recording this presentation, so it will be available afterwards to forward to colleagues if you're interested. And that is about it. I'll just quickly summarize what we're talking about today. NIH is, of course, best known for its grant writing and SBIR program. But beyond the SBIR and STTR funding, the NIH's Intramural research program offers underutilized partnerships, licensing, collaboration, and in-kind research opportunities to accelerate product development and achievement of value inflection points. So this session will explore how early-stage therapeutics, diagnostics, device and digital health companies can strategically engage with the NIH to strengthen their pipeline, generate data, access unique research skills and tools, and advance towards commercialization. So thanks for joining. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our first presenter, Joseph Conrad. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Again, my name is Joseph Conrad. I'm a senior technology analysis and marketing specialist with the National Cancer Institute. It's a technology transfer center. And we appreciate your interest in our topic. So let's go ahead and get started. Great. So, as Charlie said, the NIH is open for business. So we want to talk to you about how you can actually partner with us to essentially start new companies around technologies that we have that you may be interested in licensing, and also expand existing pipelines if that's what you're looking for, or even collaborate with our investigators to develop our technology or the company's technology moving forward. So as we move forward with the next slide. So why do business with NIH? Well, first, as most people know, the NIH serves as the United States' largest medical research facility. We're the largest research facility in the world, and a lot of great technologies come out of our labs. We have an annual budget of about $50 billion. About 10% of that goes to our intramural program. The remainder of that stays in the extramural program, which most people are familiar with from the standpoint of the SBIR program and grants and other funding mechanisms through which the NIH provides funding. We've got about 6,000 scientists and about 12,000 staff. And then we also generate about 1,000 or more partnerships with organizations and universities and the like. We do basic and translational and clinical research. That's where most of our discoveries are focused. We collaborate with our investigators. Our investigators collaborate with companies and other stakeholders to help get technologies to patient populations that we develop them for. And we need partners such as yourselves to help commercialize the technologies that we develop, because we don't have the statutory authority or the capability to do that. And that's why one of the reasons why we partner with companies to help advance our technologies forward. So let's talk about a few reasons businesses would want to license with us. Basically, the top two of the six that we have listed here is that we want to be able to have companies in-license our technology. As I mentioned before, we don't have the statutory authority or the capability to develop, to commercialize the technologies that we develop to get them to our patient population. So we take advantage of the great technology abilities that these companies have to actually commercialize the technology, manufacture it, and get it to patients. And also our technology development collaborations are available for companies. We definitely want to collaborate with companies to help develop these technologies. And as I mentioned, the technology can originate with us or originate with the company, but we are keen on developing that technology to make sure that gets to patients. And then, the more common opportunities that we have available for companies, again, grant funding. Company can actually sell their products to the NIH, their products and services to the NIH. So NIH will purchase those type of services and products to help us develop our technologies. Companies can also use preclinical and non-clinical assets that we have. We have a ton of information with regard to helping companies and other organizations in their own particular research endeavors, from cell lines to databases and the like, that companies and organizations can take advantage of and help move their technology development forward. And again, utilizing NIH resources in that regard. So again, one of the reasons, or a few reasons, why we need to partner with companies is that we want to be able to utilize our IP as an incentive for companies to come to us to help get our technologies to patients. We also want to attract new research and development opportunities with organizations, because companies and other organizations do have wonderful abilities to create new technologies, and we'd like to be able to share in that endeavor and learn from the companies that we partner with. We also want to be able to get a return on the investment that we've created for the particular technologies that come out of our lab. The technologies that we develop are paid for by the public dollar, your tax dollars essentially, and we want to make sure that we are getting a fair return on that public dollar, and that's a reason why we license our technologies as well. And overall, and as many people would expect, we want to be able to benefit the public health with what we do and how we help other companies with their technologies. But the major reason that we partner is that we want to stimulate economic development, because if we can get a company to license a technology and build a company around it, that company is going to essentially hire people, pay those individuals, pay those employees, then those employees are going to go out and put money back into the ecosystem, into the economy, and generate, the circle of life that we all rely on. So we definitely want to focus on helping economic development in that regard. So as we've encountered companies throughout our engagements, there are a lot of myths that companies have about working with us that I want to walk through real quick. So when we talk to NIH, when we talk about NIH to companies, the major thing that they think of is that we're just a basic research institution. And while we do basic research, the fact is that a lot of what we do is more translational and clinical. So our goal is primarily to take the basic research that we do and make sure that it actually benefits patient health. So a lot of what we do in our labs translates to a clinical setting for patient health. Another myth is that they believe that we only study drugs. And while that's true, we also work on devices, develop devices. We develop diagnostics and biomarkers. We're involved in med tech, and we're also involved in AI technologies as well. So we cover the gambit of whatever touches patient health. So if it goes into a patient or a patient can use it, there's a good chance that we are actively involved in developing technologies in that area. Another myth is that we only work with academia. And while that is true, we also have hundreds of industry partnerships through our licensing and collaborative efforts. And so another one is that we only work with US entities. And that is actually, we're actually geographically agnostic. So we can work in the US and ex-US with companies. The only criteria that we have is that the company needs to be able to actually commercialize the technology and get it to patient populations that it's being developed for. And so we can work internationally on that. And then the last myth that we encounter is that we only develop our own ideas. And as I mentioned earlier, the idea can actually originate with the company partner. And I believe Michael is going to give you a case study of just that example where the technology originated outside of the NIH, was brought into the NIH and used to essentially help the company and work on our patient cohort in the clinical trial that technology was being used on. So again, when we go out and we talk to people about NIH, there is a perception that NIH is only a funding source. And so when we talk to them, they'll say something like, well, yeah, we know that the SBIR program is a great program. But the challenge with that is that they're only thinking about part of the NIH, or at least one half of the NIH. And so in the next slide, what you're going to see is that the NIH is basically split into two entities, okay, two sides of the same coin. The NIH has an extramural program, which essentially is where all the money flows out of the NIH in the form of grants and the like. And so our SBIR program sits in the extramural side of the NIH. Michael and I represent the intramural program side. And so, you know, while the extramural program sends out about 80% of the budget that we receive from Congress, 10% of that budget roughly sits within the extramural programs, and it funds all of the research that goes on in the labs on NIH's campus. And so this is where the technology originates from. And so basically what people do, or people get access primarily to NIH developed technology through our licensing and collaboration programs. And so the collaborations that we have basically are designed to co-develop the technology, again, because we don't have the statutory authority or the capacity or capability to commercialize what we develop. What we do is we provide in these collaborations indirect funding for our collaborating organizations. And so what that essentially means is that, unlike a grant program where we give you $1 million, in our co-development situations, we will spend money on the company's behalf. So for example, if there is a clinical trial going on and we're working with a collaborator, NIH covers the cost of the clinical trial. Now, the company may have to spend money to provide, say, the drug, or provide staff to help run the trial, but the lion's share of the clinical trial is paid for by the NIH. And so another perception that we have is that, you know, companies will look to universities as a source of technologies to in-license. And so from that perspective, you know, as you see on the slide, there are some amazing universities that have great technology. These companies will traditionally reach out to these companies as a source when they want to bring technologies in. But if you're only considering the universities as a source, as you'll see in the next slide, you're missing out, because the NIH primarily has technologies that essentially have made it through FDA approval. We've got over 50 FDA products in the market in the last 40 years. And so when I say you're missing out, we want to take a look at this particular slide because it represents the amount of money, or where the VCs in 2024 have placed most of their investment dollars. And as you can see at the top, oncology is a major one. But if you look down the side of this graph, you'll see all the different areas where investments are being made. The NIH essentially is operating in every one of those inventions. So we're actively developing technologies in all of these areas. And so there's a good chance that you will find technologies that you may want to consider bringing into your organization. And I'm not saying, and we're not saying, don't go to universities for technologies that you would want to bring in. We're just asking you to put us on your shopping list, because you may find something here that that works for you as well. So next slide. So I want to just make a few comparative comments about the SBIR program, working with the SBIR program, and then working with the Intramural program. And you'll see some of the major distinctions here, primarily that the, again, the Intramural program and the Extramural program sit in separate locations. The funding type for the SBIR program, as you would expect, is a grant funding. It's directly to the company. Our funding on the Intramural side is indirect. The funding range for the SBIR ranges from 400,000 to almost 3 million. On the Intramural side, it varies. And so it really depends on the nature of the agreement and the nature of the collaborative relationship that's going to take place. Geography, if you work with the SBIR program, you are limited to US. Intramurally, we work globally. As I said, we're geographically agnostic. The SBIR program is limited to the statutory definition of small business. And so comparatively, the Intramural program does not have that limitation. So we can work with companies large and small, big pharma, large, mid-sized pharma. If you have more than 500 employees, we can work with you. If you have 3 employees that have the ability to, manufacture, market, and sell the technology, get the technology to patients, we can work with you. So size limitation, we don't have one on the Intramural side. Is it a competitive process for the SBIR program? You have to fill out the application. It's judged. It's reviewed. And for the Intramural program, we don't have that competitive nature. Are there application deadlines? Yes for SBIR, no for us. You can pick up the phone at any time or shoot an email out to our technology transfer managers saying, I'd like to talk about a license for this particular technology, and you can do that anytime. Is there a formal application? Again, yes, with the SBIR program, but for the collaborations and the licensing, there is a license application that you have to fill out, but for the collaboration, you're kind of building that as you're negotiating what the nature of the collaboration is going to look like, what the outcomes are, what the parties are going to do, and the like. And then, as far as vetting goes, we have a review process for the SBIR program, and that's done by committee. But when you're working with the Intramural program, you're talking directly to the investigator that you want to collaborate with and their technology transfer manager. So it's a more intimate type of relationship to get to a positive result. And so with regard to what those relationships look like, we have various different agreements that we use to memorialize the relationship that we form with the outside investigators. And you guys don't have to worry about that. We have people in-house that can do a needs assessment to determine what agreement is going to be used for the nature of the engagement that you're looking for. And so we address whatever technology knowledge gaps that we have between us and the actual company. Again, we want the companies to in-license our technologies to expand either a pipeline or build a pipeline or build a company around that particular technology to make that their first product in their pipeline. With regard to who pays for what, it's all negotiated. And usually there's a shared effort if it's a collaborative relationship, such as a cooperative research and development agreement that's in the lower left corner of that graphic. Shared effort and cost, but it's a fair relationship for both parties. Another thing I want to point out is that we're not a CRO. So companies can't hire us to do research for them on their behalf. And we don't do sponsored research. And so from that perspective, our investigators are independent. They work independently. They determine the type of science that they pursue. And they don't do sponsored research primarily because it affects their independence. So as we'll see in the next slide, from the standpoint of licensing agreements, what type of technologies and assets are available for companies to license or collaborate with us in? Those include, again, as you see here, therapeutics, diagnostics, devices, wearable, digital health, vaccine tools, software, et cetera. And again, our technologies are mostly preclinical, but we do have clinical stage assets that are also available for licensing. And a lot of the non-patented technologies that we use or create rather are promoted as research tools to allow companies to bring those research tools into their laboratories and use them to develop their own technology. And so, for example, if you develop a technology using a particular research tool, let's say you use a cell line or tissue sample that we provide to you, you guys own the technology that's developed from the use of those research tools. So we don't have reach-through agreements in terms of if you use our technology, we're going to extract some type of license benefit from the fact that you used it to create something new. We don't do that. So you're free and clear to use our research tools in your own research, and you keep the products of your own research, even though you did use our research tool to get to it. Next slide. And so for our collaborative and cooperative research and development agreements, the collaborations between us and the outside party, we provide expertise, equipment, and material. The collaborator will provide the same thing, research, expertise, and maybe possibly money, depending on the nature of the agreement and what the outcomes are supposed to be. And then this provides the collaborator also the right to license our ownership rights in the co-developed technology. So the point of the collaboration is to jointly develop something that we both co-own. And because we can't commercialize it, we license our ownership rights to the company that helped us develop it so that they can commercialize it and get it to patient populations. And the best example of that, though, that I can give you right now is our development of Gardasil, which was the HPV vaccine. We worked together with Merck to develop it. They provided their secret sauce. We provided ours. We co-developed the new technology. They licensed our ownership rights into it. And now, you know, Gardasil is out there helping patients prevent cervical cancer. And now with that, what I'll do is I'll pass it over to Michael, and he will continue with some examples of how we work. Michael.
So thanks, Joe. So how can we benefit your company? If you're a professional services company, let's say you're a consulting firm, a regulatory affairs firm, accounting firm, etc., you've got life science clients, we could be very beneficial to your clients. So working with us, we have a lot of key opinion leaders. Our sister agency is the FDA. One thing we can offer that respectful universities cannot is we can bring in the FDA to help advise on projects that we're discussing. That does not replace any of your formal meetings with the agency. However, if we're going to spend time, resources on a project, we want to make sure that it'll get to the patient, and so they can weigh in on that. So there's collaborations, as Joe introduced, and licensing. So the great thing about collaborations is that we do not ask you for money unless we have to, unless we do not have any money, enough money in that researcher's budget to fund our part of the work. Even if we do need to ask you for money, the smaller company, the more we try to avoid that. We have a 0% overhead rate, with the exception of some clinical studies at the National Cancer Institute. So even if we do need to ask you for money, you do know that literally every dollar is going towards bringing your project to market. We do have milestone payments and royalties. We can work with you on those. We try to downstream them. We try not to let finances get in the way of a technology we're interested in working with. These collaborations don't always lead to new intellectual property. What happens if they do? Well, that's a good thing. First, if you bring in IP, it stays yours. If we develop new IP together, it would be co-owned with NIH. However, you can exercise a right of first refusal for the rights to that technology to develop. And so it's one of the few ways we're able to offer an exclusive license. Importantly, we cannot spin out a company to compete with you for that new IP. Part of my background is as a venture capitalist. Years ago, we started a company out of a major Maryland university. We then funded $2 million into the lab of the scientist inventor to get the 2.0 version of their technology. They got some amazing data, and the university went ahead and licensed it to a spin-out that they created. So that was a $2 million lesson. So there's no possibility that you're going to have to compete with the spin-out of NIH for the new IP. As on the right side, you see some of those research tools that Joe alluded to. Those are, as he said, software, mice, cell lines, reagents, etc. And as he said, if you develop any new IP using a tool that you got from us, you own the rights to that technology. Licensing something from us, either a straight license or as a result of a collaboration, we take no equity. So you can license something in from a world-renowned research institution, and your cap table stays clean. We're also not trying to maximize the amount of dollars that we get from you in the way of milestone payments and royalties on sales. We're just trying to get what's called fair value for the public dollar, which typically is company friendly. There's certainly advantages for us. We get exposure to your exciting ideas. We need your commercial development expertise. Even if you're a first-time entrepreneur, you will very quickly get to a point where your knowledge of getting your product to market exceeds ours. So we need your expertise in that area. On an as-needed basis, a collaboration is one of the few ways we're able to accept funding. And since most, if not all, of the companies on this call are very early stage with limited resources, I will let you know that we, again, try not to let the finances get in the way of moving together. We can't pay for everything, but we will try to work with you to see if there's a path forward. Most importantly is working with you to get patients the medical solutions they desperately need. So I've got two examples that I'll go through. One is Rakuten Medical. It's a cancer company that basically utilize about every part of NIH that a business can. So it's a wonderful example. It started off with them looking at a technology, and based on an NCI technology, they wrote an SBIR. So the technology was out of Drs. Choiki and Kobayashi's lab. And so you can actually write an SBIR based on an NCI technology. They then submitted what's called a startup license. It's basically a commercial evaluation license. Try before you buy. So for $5,000, they got to work with the technology for 2 years before they committed to a full license. They then decided to exercise their right for a full license. And so the company was actually founded on an NIH technology. They then continued to work with us and began their first clinical trial in head and neck cancer. They then did additional studies. And so in purple are the things that we did together. So NIH collaborated with the company preclinically to do proof of concept and IND enabling studies. Once those were done, we actually hosted and paid for the phase 1 trial. So we provided direct funding through SBIRs, and we've provided in-kind non-dilutive funding by paying for the clinical study. We provided scientific, technical, and regulatory help. Again, the company licensed our core technology to found the company, and we continued to support the company as they continued with other products. They ended up finally in 2020 getting their head and neck cancer approved in Japan. That now has expanded to other geographies. And as a result of all this, they have to date raised over $500 million. There are likely some med tech, health tech, device companies on the line. And so we also worked with a company called Somnology. The arrow at the top shows that industry, in this case, brought their technology to us. They had a wearable device for sleep disorders. Joe actually met them at a conference, which is how we meet a lot of these companies. And the company needed clinical validation. They needed to show that the device worked in patients. And Joe was able to connect them with a clinical trial that needed the device. And that was a study about a new diabetes drug at the National Institute of Diabetes, digestive and kidney diseases. And one of the quality of life impacts of this type of diabetes was severe sleep apnea, risking stroke or death. So the part that we did together was the company then had the resources to produce and provide enough devices for the phase 1 trial. And then they developed a clinical protocol with our scientists and our clinicians. And we used their devices in a phase 1 trial for this new diabetes drug. And as a result, the patients were able to have their sleep monitored at home using this remote wearable device. And the trial was quickly completed successfully. We then introduced the company to other parts of the federal government. For example, the largest hospital system in the country, which is the Veterans Administration, hospitals in all 50 states, and to date, they now have their device in at least one VA hospital in every state of the union. So what did we do with them? We collaborated with them. We ran a clinical trial studying the effect of diet and environment on sleep. We were able to test a new diabetes drug. We provided indirect or in-kind support. We helped offset some of the costs of the preclinical studies. And once again, we decided to pay for the trial itself. So that's even paying for the patients and their families to come to Bethesda when needed to be treated. And again, we provided scientific and technical support. The company has done very good. It's used money it's raised to do the 2.0 version of the technology. They've launched their own diagnostic sleep centers, won awards, and they're off and running. So we do have a clinical center. We can work with you clinically. We're actually the largest hospital that is devoted to clinical research. Plenty of other places see more patients and have more beds, but all we do is first in human studies, and we do over 1,000 at a time. So these are studies that have never been in a patient, or you could have your technology further along in one indication, but let's say you have not done a clinical trial in a second indication. That to us would still be a first in human study. Those studies don't have to be simply therapeutic. You can also do diagnostic and preventative studies with us. You can study how the disease developed, and you can know that they're done in an ethical and efficient way. So as I start to wrap up, these are some of the business and financial advantages with us. Working with us has led some companies to some major investments. We show some examples at the top. Navigen was a modest seed investment, but still they've raised lots of money since then. They were founded on our technology. So was Cargo. They raised a very healthy Series A. Certainly, admittedly, they had a management team that had a previous major exit. So that certainly impacted the amount of the Series A. But the fact that they got Series A funding was also had the technology as a major factor. And I already mentioned Raccoon Medical. We've had technologies that were founded by companies, acquired, and that shows an example in the middle. And you see some blockbuster products that started as NIH co-developed products. You'll see that they're all very large global pharmas. It's important to mention that every single one of these started as a collaboration with a small company like yours. And then when it got to a certain value inflection point, say a phase 2 trial, then the small company did a standard distribution, marketing, and sales deal with a big pharma. In some cases, they were acquired. So all the blockbusters you see at the bottom of the slide started with companies like yours. How to work with us, I say it's just 4 easy steps. You have your company, and then there's NIH that contains we in the tech transfer office, and also the scientist and the clinician inventor. And so you reach out to us with some interest, and we will discuss your request. That is, what are you interested in doing with us, and who are you interested in working on? And so we discuss the request, and then the scientist or the clinician decides whether or not they want to move forward. So it's important to mention that Joe and I are the connectors. We are not the gatekeepers. We do not decide whether NIH works with your company. That's up to the scientist. That's up to the clinician. So they talk with each other, and then with step 3, if they're interested in looking forward, then they'll have further discussions with you. The tech transfer office will do a needs assessment as towards the type of agreement, and then you both get to work. So what Joe and I have been describing is not a special program. Try to sort of silo your thoughts away from SBIRs for a moment. Working with us, just like you work with any other academic thought leader, is not competitive. There's no application, there's no deadlines. So I know a lot of your companies on this call are very small, and you're working as hard as you can just to keep the doors open, let alone take on a new project. You don't have to worry. You're not going to run out of time. If reaching out to us next week works for you, that's great. If it's going to be a year or two before you're in a position where NIH collaboration or license makes sense, reach out to us at any time. So we'll get a small amount of information from you to make sure you're a fit with our programs, and we'll learn what you want to do with us. And again, we'll try to find a door for you and us to knock on. We have what I call a commercialization-friendly business model. We actually see you as a partner rather than a revenue source. We're trying to get products to market and to patients. We're not trying to see how many dollars we can wring out of you. So therefore, working with us is really an exchange of ideas and efforts. We actually have a statutory preference to work with and license to small businesses. Even if you're Merck or Pfizer, you literally could not pay us enough to work with you because we don't do sponsored or fee-for-service research. There has to be an interest in your technology. We do reward the inventors to a modest extent, and we also reinvest any revenue into doing additional research. And we provide indirect or in-kind support that can expand your runway and can extend what other capital you have. So my next to last slide before contact, what I call the drop the mic moments. In 2024, if you added up all the US sales of products that were licensed from us, it would actually come to over 10 billion US dollars. And again, as Joe has said, we have well over 50 product approvals. We don't take any equity on a license. We don't have any overhead, again, with the exception of some clinical studies in cancer. Your IP stays yours. New IP you get rights to. You can work with us preclinically or clinically, and you can work with key opinion leaders and world-class resources. Even in today's challenging environment, we still have a good reputation, and therefore we can raise the profile of your company. So how do you know if you're ready to work with us? Well, one is, do you see NIH as a partner or a customer? So as Joe alluded to, we do buy a lot of stuff, but that's not the tech transfer office. If you're interested in selling to NIH, that would be the Office of Procurement. Are you developing your product to go through a regulated body? So if your go-to-market strategy is direct-to-consumer or over-the-counter, while those are completely valid go-to-market strategies, we do not focus on companies that are going that route to market. You do need the time, the people, the resources to negotiate a complex legal agreement. You eventually will need the ability to develop the resulting IP. You don't need to do it as you start working with us, but as the project develops, we do want to have you have more commercial capabilities. And again, both from a staffing and financial basis, you need to be able to do your part of the work. So for a few people who came in late, I do want to reiterate that our wonderful hosts have a PDF of this entire presentation, so you don't have to worry about jotting down all the information on here. If you're interested in having an intro call, we're happy to do that. We're also holding webinars like we are today. We are going to be at conferences. For example, if you're going to be at BIO, we'll be part of the Federal Lab Consortium. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Thank our hosts again and look forward to your questions.
That's great. Thank you, Michael and Joe. Just a reminder to people online, you can submit questions through the Q&A box at the bottom. The presentation was very thorough in addressing possible questions that we don't have any at the moment. I have one, though, and that is, if a company, what's the best way for a company to sort of see what sort of inventory NIH has as far as licensable technology? Where would they go to sort of
So the last slide, I'll
that?
show it again for one moment to answer your question. Okay, so on the bottom right of this particular slide, you'll see two websites. Of course, the links aren't active in a PDF, but they're pretty simple web addresses. If you want to look at all the technologies we have, you can look at techtransfer.nih.gov. If you're looking for a program and or thought leader to work with, you can search all of our faculty and all of our programs by looking at Intramural Research Program, which is irp.nih.gov. So those are two ways that you can look at the store, so to speak.
Very helpful. And do you suggest having engagement conversations before SBIR applications if a company is submitting one of those?
Yes. So we get questions, of course, about SBIRs all the time. Even though that's the extramural program, I can tell you that a company can apply and get SBIR funding. You can both apply for it and receive it and do a partnership with NIH. It can be an and, not an or. The only caveat is that you cannot use money that you get from the SBIR for an NIH collaboration. So admittedly, let's say we're doing a preclinical study and it's going to cost each side $100,000. Your company would need $100,000 outside of your SBIR funding in order to move forward. In my career, I've written, reviewed, and gotten SBIRs. What I would definitely suggest is reaching out to the program officer or manager early and often. Every single announcement has a program officer or program manager identified, at least one identified with the program, actually in the application. And that's your point of contact. They want to hear from you. And it's a very practical reason why. If you submit something, they have to read it and score it. And so they would rather read and score, respectfully, more sophisticated applications. So for example, if you have an idea of what you would like to apply for and what your specific aims are, contact the program officer or manager first to make sure that you're applying for the right funding opportunity. It could be that on paper, it seems like you figured out which one is best, but the program officer or manager may have some ideas about other grant possibilities that might be actually more appropriate. The other thing is they'll give you some feedback on your project. So it's not a full review. However, they can give you sort of a little bit of, feedback before you actually go ahead and submit. And that gives you a little bit of a competitive advantage because, frankly, 9 out of 10 companies just read the requirements and submit it. They don't talk to the SBIR office at all. And you should be doing that. They want to hear from you.
What do you think? How can companies best prepare? What's the biggest mistake you see from companies?
Not talking to the office. Sometimes they apply to the wrong program, and then they won't even be scored. They'll be triaged, and the company will think to themselves, "Well, this was a great technology. Why didn't I even get scored?" It's because you didn't even know you didn't submit to the right one. If you haven't written one before, get some help. I know that the state of Virginia has some programs. If you spun out of a university, it's not uncommon for the university, especially the larger ones, to have some sort of program. And there are workshops all the time, either in person or virtual, and do that. And then expect to, unfortunately, have to submit twice because the success rate with the first submission is about half that of the second try. It's like between 15 and 18% for your first try, and it's in the 30s for your other try. And then if I put I was in venture capital for a while, I know that everybody on the line is very restrained when it comes to time and resources. I would suggest that you look for places in addition to SBIRs. For example, there's a lot of foundations and philanthropies that help support whatever disease you're looking to address. And they are wonderful sources, not just of funding. They can let you know potential company partners, what other large companies are working in the field, etc.
Got a couple more. For a company with a non-oncology biologic, is the best way to gauge NIH interest in a clinical trial collaboration to contact you?
Yes. Joe and I cover NCI and 9 other institutes. It doesn't matter which those are. We are responsible for 10, but we try to help all 27. So the short answer is, Charlie, is yes, because unfortunately the other tech transfer offices, and there are 8 others, they don't have a business development or alliance development team like Joe and me. So if we're not the right door, for example, if you're developing something for infectious disease, neurological disease, diabetes, heart disease, we will provide you direct contact information to our point of contact at the right tech transfer office so that you can begin discussions with them.
At this time, does the NIH have a sort of a preference in the type of collaboration? And I mean, sort of along product line, whether it's, therapeutics, med tech, et cetera? Is there sort of an internal interest in one sector over others?
No, we have over 400 research programs. Again, we usually, if a company asks, are we relevant? I mostly ask about their go-to-market strategy. So, for example, if your company is developing a natural, let's say a nutraceutical, an herbal-based ointment to treat severe eczema, you can sell that over the counter. We really don't focus on that. If you're saying, though, that this ointment may delay the onset of skin cancer, well, you need to go through the FDA to claim that. We would love to talk to you about that. Again, and additionally, the market can be small, and I know most of the companies on the line, you're trying to address large markets and make a lot of money. However, if your company is addressing a smaller indication that is a smaller market, as long as it's a significant unmet medical need, we would be interested in it. If anybody on the line, for example, is developing a new malaria treatment for sub-Saharan Africa, that has zero market in the developed world, but we would love to talk to you about it because sub-Saharan Africa really suffers from malaria and they need medical solutions as much as somebody with prostate cancer in the US.
Great, thank you. I have a question here. Is there a list of field-initiated projects available?
So again, if you look at the tech transfer website, techtransfer.nih.gov, you will see press releases and other case studies and success stories that can tell you more.
Great. I think that has exhausted our questions. So if there's any more, get them in super fast while I sort of do the little closing here.
Joe, is there anything that we didn't touch on that we should mention?
No, Michael, I think you covered everything I think we covered everything that we needed to mention. So,
Great.
feel free, to the audience, feel free to reach out to Michael or myself. If you have any questions that weren't answered here, we'd love to talk with you and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael and Joseph, and to all the participants who logged in. For more information on this recorded event or on future webinars or other events, please check out our website at CvilleBioHub.org.
Oh, Kaylee actually put something in the chat reminding us. So NIH has a research festival in the fall. She has the website, the web link in the chat. And if your company, especially if your company is a provider, for example, maybe you have a tool or maybe you have a service and you're interested in selling to NIH, the Research Festival is a scientific event that has a vendor fair associated with it. And for a very low amount of money, you can set up a booth and it's very egalitarian. Everybody gets the same amount of space. And you can talk to them about, buying your solution or buying your pipettes, whatever that may be, buying your antibodies. And hundreds and hundreds of NIH researchers visit the vendor fair. And so it's a very good way if you're a supply company or a service company, professional services, to create awareness at the NIH community. Because again, on the procurement side, we spend about $2 to $3 billion a year. So it can be a very good opportunity for you to create awareness.
Terrific. Great way to wrap it up. Thanks so much, Joe and Michael and everyone else for logging in. Have a great day.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
guys. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.